Good evening, I'm Luke McLennan and welcome to A Current Affair. On the back of a current dispute at the Port of Brisbane, we are looking back at Australia's worst industrial dispute. On Saturday the 29th of October 2011, an international aircraft corporation, Qantas, issued a media statement announcing that from 8 p.m. on Monday the 31st of October 2011, it would essentially lock out all of its licensed engineers, ramp staff and baggage handlers, and even Australian and international pilots. This was a peak of the dispute, which started in late 2010 and spanned to early 2012. There were two main parties involved in the dispute. The first was an airline company, Qantas, and the second were three unions which represented baggage handlers, pilots and ground staff. The unions were the Transport Workers Union, Australian and International Pilots Union, and the Australian Licensed Aircraft Engineers Association. Three unions were concerned about how outsourcing on Qantas's behalf would affect wages and their job security. Another concern that the unions had was the use of low-paid pilots and contractors that had less knowledge and skill that would foreshadow the risk of safety hazards and a drastic downfall in Qantas's service and reputation. The employees thought that their job security would be at risk as jobs would be given to workers overseas and they would be replaced. They were also concerned about contractors that did not receive the same entitlements as employees, reducing their working conditions, which would have a flow effect to the wages of employees and conditions of employees. Before and during the event of the dispute, Qantas was facing an increasingly competitive domestic and international market and external adversity such as the soaring Australian dollar and high oil prices. These said threats were impacting the company's market share, which declined from 34% in 2000 to 19% in 2010, plus the company's return on equality and cost structure. To combat these problems, Qantas devised a plan to transform the operations of its business, which included a major restructure to reduce costs and increase efficiency. For this to occur, Qantas would have to conduct a major restructure of the workforce, which included overseas outsourcing and use of contractors. By doing this, more than 2,800 Australian jobs would have been lost and replaced by international workers, and the company would save over $300 million per annum. Some of the key issues in the dispute included the workers' union for a 5% wage increase per year, which was well above the average for the industry at that time, a 1% additional superannuation every year, over and above superannuation guarantee obligations, imposition of restrictions on Qantas's use of contractors and flexible labour, including site rates to apply to all contractors and labour hire workers, and ratios to restrict the number of contractors and labour hire workers to no more than 20% of Qantas's workforce, restrictions on Qantas's right to determine how overtime is allocated, and union involvement in various other aspects to managerial prerogative, the dispute settlement procedure to apply to all manners of the workplace. Due to the national economic significance of this dispute and the negotiation failures, the government stepped in and referred the case to Fair Work Australia. Fair Work Australia ordered the company and the unions on the 31st of October 2011 to cease all industrial action and set down a 21-day negotiation period. At the end of the 21-day period, in the case of the dispute with the Transport Workers Union and the AIPA, Fair Work Australia stepped in and arbitrated the following: a 2.8% per annum wage increase, backdated 12 months, and a rejection of the union claim for a 20% cap on contractors for ground staff. Throughout the dispute, Qantas used an array of techniques and actions to maintain its integrity. Many of these were put in place before the dispute to prepare staff and win over the public to avoid bad press. For example, management staff were trained before the dispute as baggage handlers and check-in crew in case of a strike. Several staff made unauthorized in-flight announcements to passengers about the dispute. Engineers held 1-minute work stops, and right-hand engineers threatened to work with their left hands, and other engineers came to work an hour late and held hour-long stop work meetings. Qantas staged a lockout on October 31st, 2012, of 35,000 staff worldwide by grounding the global fleet, in a strategy aimed at forcing the intervention of Fair Work Australia. The significant point about the grounding was that it did not affect the three groups of employees involved in the dispute, but everyone else in the company, including short-haul pilots, cabin crew, and administrative staff. The precise legality of the company's actions in relation to those other workers was unclear at the time and has remained so since. Qantas lockout affected over 35,000 staff members in the company. Many of the staff members affected were not directly involved in the dispute. 90,000 passengers were also held at an inconvenience as their flights were cancelled abruptly. Qantas lost over 100 million and constituted 1.2 million hours of employee industrial action. Employee time lost did not come close to that, but Qantas stated that the financial cost of the industrial action by the union was close to 68 million. Qantas obviously lost a certain amount of brand reputation from the public due to the dispute, and also from the unions, as they are not sure if Qantas has the ability to force third-party intervention in a way that unions are unlikely to be able to achieve. Criticism of Qantas management in failing to convince their workforce of the need for Qantas's workplace change. Qantas's rival airlines responded positively to the fleet grounding. Virgin Australia offered stranded passengers a discount on flight fares. Virgin also announced that it would provide an additional 43,000 seats in the coming weeks to accommodate Qantas passengers. Through negotiation and conciliation reflects the concept that, wherever possible, industrial relation parties prefer to resolve industrial disputes via negotiation of their own enterprise agreement without third-party intervention. This is important because when a decision is left to a third-party intervention, both sides have no further power to influence the outcome, and this can lead to results that neither party desires. The Qantas dispute demonstrates that the need for legislative change to make it easier for an affected party to apply for suspension or cooling off period of protection action. To prevent another lengthy and costly dispute, it is recommended that both parties do not take as drastic measures. I understand that the employees in the union want better wages, job security, etc. Therefore, Qantas should raise employee wages to match inflation. If Qantas consults their current workforce before they make any plans on outsourcing and relocation, they could work out suitable arrangements. Instead of going on strike, unsatisfied employees could find another alternative which does not put the company's income and net profit at risk. Qantas could outsource to a company or business which helps determine a correct amount of superannuation and wage increase that is liable for the current time frame. A person or an organisation that resolves workplace disputes would be a viable option in the future to prevent this from happening again.